Today we're starting Perek Chof Aleph, dealing with the Arei HaLeviyim. I'd like to read the psukim, the first 12 psukim of the Perek. Vayigishu roshei avois HaLeviyim el Elazar HaKohen v'Yeshua binun ve'el roshei avois hamatois livnei Yisrael. As you remember in the last Perek, we dealt with the parasha of Afrosha of Shiurei Miklot, the Arei Miklot, 3 in Ever Hayarden HaMizrachi, and 3 in Ever Hayarden HaMa'aravi in Eretz Yisrael. Vayedabru aleim b'shiloi be'eretz Knan le'moir, Hashem tzivo b'yad Moshe loses lonu orim losheves, umigroshehen livehen teinu. Vayitnu bnei Yisrael HaLeviyim menachaloson al pi Hashem, heseorim ha'ele ve'es migresheim. There is a halacha. Klal Yisrael says is commanded in the Torah b'yad Moshe to be mafrish each shevet from his nachalo for the Leviyim, because the Leviyim did not have a chelik in Eretz Yisrael, so each and every one of the shvatim had to be giving part of his orim for the Leviyim. So let's see what is being commanded. Everything was al pi goyrol. Vayetze hagoyrol lemishpechois hakehosi, vayehi livnei aharon hakohen min haLeviyim, mimate Yehuda umimate Hashimoini umimate Binyamin begoyrol orim 13. We know that Kehas had 4 children, Amram, Yitzhar, Chevron, and Uziel. So it says, Zalibnei Aharon, which Aaron is the son of Amram, one of the 4 children of Kehas. They received from Yehuda, Shimon, and Binyamin, Orim 13, 13 towns. Let's go weiter. Posuk Hey, ulevnei kehos aneisorim v'mishpachois mate Ephraim umate Dan umechatzish mate Menashe begoyrol os orim oser. From bnei kehas aneisorim, which is Moshe, because Moshe is the other son of Amram, and the children of Yitzhar, Chevron, and Uziel, so they got memishpachois mate Ephraim. They received from Ephraim and Dan and Chotzi, Shevet, Menashe, 10 cities. Okay, so we have 13 cities going to the Kohanim, which are a descendant of Kehos, Ben Amram, Aaron, Ben Amram, Ben Kehos, and for his descendant, for his children and grandchildren, they received 13 cities from Yehuda, Shimon, and Binyamin. And Bnei Kehos Aneisorim, the other Moshe Rabbeinu's children, and the other 3 children of Kehos, which is Yitzhar, Chevron, and Uziel, they got 10 cities. Now, we know that Shevet Levi was not only Kehos, it was Gershon, Kehos, and Merari. So now the pasuk continues saying, Ulivnei Gershon, the children of Gershon, Mimishpachois mate Yisachar umate Osher, umate Naftali umchatzi mate Menashe baboshon begoyrol orim 13. Bnei Gershon received from Yisachar, from Osher, and from Naftali, and the chatzi shevet Menashe baboshon, which means we're talking about giving some cities from the eastern part of the Jordan River. You know that the Chotzi Shevet Menashe that stayed in Shevet, in Ever Hayarden HaMizrachi, had to give from Eretz HaBashan also. Together, 13. So we had 13 from Bnei Aaron. Kehos got 10, so 23. 13 got Gershon, so 36. Livnei Merori, Mishpechois Mimate Reuven Umate Gad, they received their orim in Ever Hayarden HaMizrachi, umimate Zvulun orim 12. So here is another 12 cities. So we have 13 and 10 is 23, 36 plus 12 is 48. That's the 48 Arei HaLeviyim, which included 6 Arei Miklot, which 3 of them were in Ever HaYarden HaMizrachi, and 3 of them were in Ever HaYarden HaMa'aravi. An additional 42 Orim, the additional 42 cities which were given according to what the Psukim are telling us right now. So the Bnei Yisrael were mafrish nenachalo. Now, how do we prorate those nachlos? Okay, so the chalukah is according to what we just read. Yehuda, Shimon, and Binyamin give 13. Ephraim, Dan, and Chotze Menashe 10. Issachar, Osher, Naphtali, and Chotze Shevet Menashe, which is on Eretz Yisrael, 13. And Reuven, Gad, and Zvulun, 12. So, in order to understand it, I would like to read a few psukim at the end of Parshas Masei. The end of Parshas Masei, Shteve Nosno Lavim Minachal Asachudzosom, Orim Losheves, Umigrosh Leorim Svivoiseim Titnu LaLevim, Vehoyu Heorim Loem Losheves, Umigrosheim Yule Behemtom Ulechushom Ulekol Chayosom. The Orim were given to the Levim themselves, and there were empty lots, empty pieces of land, in order to be roya their tzoyin, their behemoths. And also it was a place for them to take a shpatzir. They have to have a place. The Targum Yonason says, Migrash la'areim, he's metargem v'yas rivcheim. They be a mokoim for revach, for place to have some space. Rashi in Soitin, Daf Chav Zayin, says, and I'm quoting, says Rashi, V'nosnu hamigroshim halolu sheyem mokoim cholok ponu berevacha ein b'lei bais v'lei zoyir moiso lenoyu liyis lo'ir le'avir. Rashi says, Pasha to have gardens, park, so the migroshim, the orim, which were given as set forth, that 48 orim is for dwelling, for being, for the Levim themselves. And the migroshim, the open space, the garden is for air, for some of it for the behemoths, and some of it for, to sit down. The Rambam, very, very interesting. The Rambam in Pirush HaMishnah, the Rambam says that, and I quote, the Rambam in Sayin Pirush HaMishnah, if you want to take a look in Sefer HaMitzvahs, the Mitzvah Kuf Pei Gimel, the Rambam says that Tzivonu loseis orim losheves ki ein lam chelek ba'oretz v'hu amru yisol v'nos l'avim orim loshevet u'migrash hu ha'yishuv ha'korev lo'ir v'hu shekoirim etzleinu shvilim ha'chitzoinim b'hem yoshvim ha'roim v'ha'ikrim. The people who deal in agriculture and the shepherds are sitting there, shvilim, some paths, some way to go for shpatzir. But you have to give them cities to live and around the surroundings for the behemoths, and for some to have some open space for walking or for air or for whatever it is. Now, the Chalukas Hashvotim in the Afrosha of the Orim, we're going to take a look in the Chumash. Shtei dort in Parshas Masei, shtei toch mefurish in Parshas Masei, ve'orim asher titnu me'achuz Yisrael mehesharav tarbu, u'me'eis ha'me'at tam'itu, ish kefi nachalos asher incholu, yiten me'orov la'levim. It's seemingly reading the Posuk al Panov is that kefi, the goydel of the chelik that each and every shevet gets, he has to give his contribution to the Levim. Targum Yonason says, Afnort of that Posuk, V'koryon de titnu min achsom ne Yisrael, mishivto de amei saget tiskun, umishivto de amei zoir tizorun. God, in other words, the shevet which has a larger population count has to give more, depending on population count. That's how you state Targum Yonason. Harav Tarba doesn't mean if you got a bigger city. It means if you have more residents. Apparently, if you go, as the soldiers is chalak lefi per capita, so it's the same thing, because Afanzad, that somebody was getting according to the Nachal Mischat per capita and not to give it to the Shvatim an equal part, and they within themselves gave it. But if they, so we dealt with this Gemara several times. But in any event, with a Shevet which has larger population, and if it says Lefi, it's always a Schalko Lefi Nefoshes, so Mitzrayim, Yetz Mitzrayim, Oretz, whichever Manda Omer it is. But apparently a Shevet that has 60,000 got a bigger Chelik. Shevets had 40,000 according to that Shita. So they had a larger city, so they had to have a larger contribution in their share to giving Arei HaLeviyim. Now, if we look at the Hemshech of the Psukim, and I'm going to read it very fast, state in the Psukim, and we're going to do it real fast because we don't have Vayitnu b'nei Yisrael alim esorim ha'ile, and I'm reading fast. Vayitnu mimate b'nei Yehuda mimate b'nei Shimon esorim ha'ile, right? Vayitnu lem skiyas arbo avi arei chevron be'ar Yehuda ves Mikosher ves Sod ha'ir not l'kol ben Yefune ולבני אהרן נוסנו אס ליבנו ואס יוסי ואס אשתמויה ואס חוילן ואס דביר ואס עין ואס יוטו ואס בי שמש אורים 9 מאיס שני השבטים האלה. It says beferish that amongst Yehuda and Binyamin they contributed 9 cities. Then we're going to go weiter. Mata Binyamin is Givoin v'es Geva v'es Hanoses v'es Almoin Orim Arba. So Binyamin is giving 4. Okay, Yehuda and Shimon together are giving 9. Ubnei kehosan isorim. Okay, vayitnu lem ir miklot ve'eskid ve'ezev ve'migoshe orim arba. So the rest, the other one is also giving Ephraim 4. Umimate dan el toke gibtoin ayoloin gasrimoin arba. Mata Menashe he gives only 2 Tanach and gasrimoin orim 2. Okay, ulibnei Gershon, we'll see the other one is given the other 2, so it's 4. Lebnei Gershon, Mishpeh Chatzi Menashe, Orim 2, so between the 2 Chotzi Shevet Menashe, they give also 4. Umate Isochor, as Kishyoin, as Dovros, as Yarmus, as Inganim, Arba. Mate Osher, also Arba. Mimate Naftoli, here we find something different. Mimate Naftoli, Sholish, Orim Sholish. Ulemishpoches Nemerori Mata Zvulnus Yoknom, Zvulun gives 4, and so on. God gives 4, and Merori gets anyhow. Kol Orim Am Nisol Mishpoches Alvim Gorolim Orim 12, Kol Arei HaLeviyim B'toch Achuz B'nei Yisrael Orim 48 Orim. So it comes out very, very fascinating that if we look around, if we take 48 Orim, theoretically, if I was the one to make the division, you take 48 Orim and you split it, you prorate it to 12 Shvatim, theoretically each one of the Shvatim has to give 4 Orim. But if we follow very closely the number of the Orim, which were hufrosh from each and every Shevet, we see that most of the Shvatim, Taka gave 4 Orim, but Yehuda and Shimon gave together 9, and Naftali, on the other hand, gave 3. And the question is, I mean, amongst the 3 of them, Yehuda, Shimon, and Naftali, they gave 12. But they're not the 3 separate Shvatim. Yehuda and Shimon dwell together, fine. They gave 9, and Naftali is giving only 3. Hadover Oimer Dorshein. So the Malbim here of the North, on this posuk, Orim Teisha Meishnei Shvatim, says a shtickle to Rotza Levayer, I'm reading the Lashain HaMalbim. Madua nosnu mi Yehuda v'Shimon tisha Orim, mikol shnei shvatim lelokhu rak shmoina Orim, 4 Orim mikol echod, umichutz mishevet Naftali. Naftali gave 3. Ki achar shekolev, lo kachelek godel biyichud, hu gam hoyot tzorich loseis ir lalevim, kemo she'omar kosuv ish kefi nachalosei, yitein me'orov lalevim. V'hoyo lechevroin, that's the city of Kolev, kforim v'sodei srabi me'oid, ad shelefi hashir o yotzorich sheyitim bifnei atzmoi, kemoi revia hashevet sheir achas. V'nosan es chevroin v'sde'air v'chatzereo hoyuloi. V'zeh yutzo leber sheminachlas levoer, sheminachlas Yehuda lokchu mikolev ir bifnei atzmoi chelkoi, v'nishal leYehuda v'shim shmeina orim, v'im cheven oyo teisha. וזה שאומר לבני אהרון הכהן רוצה לא יאמר אם חלקוי של כלב, והגם שלא כל רוי ואורי מיהודה לא משמעון, זה מפני ששמעון נאכל בשריך יהודה כנ"ל, ונעשה משני השבטים כנחל האחס. This is the lotion of the Malbim, which means like this. Kalev ben Yefune, he was promised in the Torah he's going to get his Egen and Achala, not together with his Shevet, because he was from the Raglim, the only Meragel besides Yeshua bin Nun, the only Meragel that was Diber b'shvach ha'oretz v'lo holach be'atzas, the Meraglim. So he got his independent large city of Hebron and the proximity, the corporation limit of Hebron, and therefore he had to be mafresh besides the Yehuda and Shimon amongst them that had to be mafresh blended 8, since he got his Egen and Achlo, he had to deal like his own quarter of a Shevet, and therefore here is the number 9 that comes 2 from Yehuda, 4 from Yehuda, 4 from Binyamin, from Shimon, and the rest, the 9th city is Hebron, which is one of the Horav Michoel, is given by Kalev ben Yefune. Problem is as following. We have a Mishnah. The Mishnah in Sanhedrin, in Daf Kuf Yud Aleph, Shtei Mishnah Azeh. The Mishnah says that you don't make Yeir Nidachas. Let me just talk about Yeir Nidachas. You don't make Yeir Nidachas Elohim Kain Hamadiach ve'anidach me'oisa Yeir me'oisa Shevet. You learn out from the pasuk that Sai, the person who's Madiach, and Sai the Mudach, the person who accepted it and was going to camp to make up a desor for the Yeir Nidachas, have to be from the same city and from the same Shevet. So the Gemara Itmer Rabbi Yochanan Omar Cholkin Irachas Lishnei Shvatim. We saw this already in the past, famous Machlekes Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. Do we put a border in the middle of the city to give part of the city to one Shevet and another part to another Shevet? Machlekes Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan holds you could split the city to 2 Shvatim. Rish Lakish says you don't give it. Isa Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish Achi Umadicher Moisir Moisa Shevet. My love. What do you mean Moisa Moisa? If it says Moisa, what does it have to say Moisa Shevet? If it's Moisa, and if you say En Cholkin Arachel Shnei Shvatim, so apparently it has to be Moisa Shevet. So why does it say it has to be Sai Moisa Yisam Moisa Shevet? Shema Mineh, here is a raya that Rabbi Yochanan being against Rish Lakish, Cholkin Irachas Shnei Shvatim. So there's no raya. Person from one Shevet can go ahead and give his nachalo. He got a piece of land for his nachalo, and he made business with somebody else, and he gave it over to Matono. A woman got married to somebody from the other Shevet, and she take over the nachalo with her. There's no Yisur anymore. If you remember, we spoke about it one. There was expiration of the Yisur, the Hutu Ashvatim Lo V'zeh B'zeh, and there is no din of Leisisev nachalo Mishevet L'Shevet. The woman could be ma'avir, she could transfer her rights that she received from her father, nichse milug, nichse tzon barzel, to her husband, who was coming from a different shevet. So there's no riot. Bama says, I'm right. Here it happened. The reason why by Yeir Nidachas Shtei Mishnah, the Madiach and the Mudach have to be from the same shevet, because if it happens to be that the Mudach happens to be from another shevet, and he received from his wife from that shevet, Azay Zokt, the Gemara. The Gemara comes in and continue. Israel, more as a kasha from unsere Pasuk. Steht doch, Orim Teisha Me'eis Shnei Hashevotim Oil. It said that Yehuda and Shimon gave amongst them 9 cities. My love, Arbo Palga Mehai, Arbo Palga Mehai, Shmamin Chilkin Achas Lishnei Shvotim. Is another kasha Rabbi Yochanan wants to prove that you could be Cholik Irachas Lishnei Shvotim, because it says that amongst Yehuda and Shimon, they gave 9. Apparently, it means each one gave 4.5 shtet. So the Gemara look Arba Mehai v'Chamisha Mehai. They gave 4 cities from one of the 2. The Gemara doesn't say which one what. And Chamisha Mehai. So the Gemara Yachil Lefirish Perusha. If the Navi here comes along and gives us exact detailed map of who is giving what and Rocha Shtet, so if it's, you see that every Shevet itself, it says Arbo, Arbo, Arbo. Yehuda and Shimon, you should say Arbo from Yehuda, or Chamisha from Yehuda, and Arbo from Shimon, and vice versa. So the Gemara kasha. What does it mean? The Gemara kasha. Pashtus, what it means, if you learn Poshet Pshat, art scroll, that he was mekabel the shaila, and the Gemara says that everyone apparently is a raya to Rabbi Yochanan that each one of them gave 4.5 shvatim. It's a kasha because otherwise, if you say 4 and 5, hoya dinoisem that the Navi should be mefarish which one of the shvatim gave 4 and which one gave 5. Rashi learns not that way. Rashi says kasha, right? And by the way, shtetoch klor that each one of the shvatim gave 4.5 cities, which is not like we just said over from the Malbim. The Malbim says the whole shtickle Torah that each one gave 4, and Kolev got Hebron, and Hebron was an independent city, and therefore he had to give itself. The Gemara over here doesn't have a zecher that the Gemara comes along either it's 4.5 or 4 and 5. But the Gemara doesn't have a tzad that there is a one person giving one shtot, which does not appear to come upon the surface in the Ganze Sugyas HaGemara in Kuf Yud in Sanhedrin. But when the Gemara says kasha, Rashi says Loshan haposu kosher letoretz leman da'amar chelkin avaloi mitoisov. In other words, it's a kasha, or from a kasha shtarmenish. It's not a pirche, which means to say that the Gemara doesn't mean that each one gave 4.5 shvatim. It's not good kasha. It's a kasha. It could have been 4 and 5. There's no raya to 4.5. I wasn't saying Akash. That's the Rana from the North says the reason why it wasn't Meforish, because since Shimon we know didn't get, there was a nevuah, we spoke about it several times. Achal came b'Yaakov v'afitzim b'Yisrael. He dwelled within Yehuda. He didn't get his Egan and Nachalo, but we gave Shimon a Nachalo b'toich Nachalos b'nei Yehuda. So since he's subordinated and he's mixed and he's involved with the Ran within Nachlas Yehuda, therefore he blended both of them, and it doesn't say. If that's the case, we don't have, if that is the pshat, like the Ran says, so the truth of the matter, he could go back to the Malbim that Be'emes was 4 and 4 from each one, and 1 came from Kolev, because and the old time, the Gemara doesn't say, the old time the Gemara says because it's Me'ura ve'oimed, therefore it's all blended together, and it doesn't have an exact punctual proration of each one of the shvatim. La'alocha, we pasken that chelkin, like Rabbi Yochanan, chelkin ir achas lebei shvatim. So the mail Rabbi Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the way he learns Poshta Pshat, Rabbi Yochanan doesn't have to come on to doichak dikaturutzim. Each one of them gave 4.5 or. I'd like to focus a little bit further and deeper inside. The Gemara in Bava Basra, the Sugyas HaGemara in Bava Basra. In the Sugyas HaGemara in Bava Basra, in Daf Kuf Yud Zayin, the Gemara steht azeh. Gemara says that Leboyei ha'oretz nischalko, Eretz Yisrael was mischalik to those people who came to Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yonasan says, Shidas Rabbi Yonasan, Rabbi Yonasan ima leboyei ha'oretz nischalko, oretz shenema le'ele techalek ha'oretz benachalo. If that's the case, let me ask you a question. Yehuda, Shevet Yehuda, was merubah b'uchlusim. I understand. If we go back in the Mifkad of Bnei Yisrael in Avei Smoyav prior to crossing the Yarden and coming into Eretz Yisrael, so Yehuda was merubah b'uchlusim. He had 76,500 nefoshes in Shevet Yehuda. So he was merubah b'uchlusim. I understand why he has to give more. But Shevet Shimon, the whole Vayu Amisim B'Magefa above Esem Elef, we read the Rashi says so clearly that all the Magefa, the people who died, the 24,000 were all from Shevet Shimon. The Maisev Zimri ben Solu, who was Shlomiel ben Surishade, the Nossi of Shevet Shimon, and all the people who died in the Magefa, the 24,000 were Shevet Shimon. That's why if we look in Arvis Moyev, we see that the count of Shevet Shimon, the Gibliben, is 22,000 people. Now, being that we just read the Shteitach in Torah, ve'orim asher titnu menach me'achuzas b'nei Yisrael me'arav u'mesai ma'atam itu mesarav tarbu ish kefi nachalosei. So why is Shevet Shimon, their prorated 22,000 people, have to give the same amount of other shvatim which are much bigger? So Be'emes is the Netziv in Emek Dover as the Kasha. He says, and I'm quoting the Netziv in Parshas Maseh, Sarav Tarbu be'emes oy mikol hashvotim daled lekol ir echot ורק מיהודו ושמעון לא נשתבו. מיהודו יש 8 עיר, ומשמעון עיר אחס. והיינו מעשריו תרבה. So the shtickle when we see 9 cities of here, it doesn't mean 9 cities, 4.5 till we saw now the whole Sugyas HaGemara in Sanhedrin. They split it. The Gemara says Island 4.5, 5 and 4. Comes the new shtickle Torah. Harav Tarben Achalosoi, being that therefore Yehuda be'emes gave 8 Orim and Shimon gave a Yerachas. So Shimon was a chelik mut. The truth of the matter is, if I take 76,500 and 22,000, I come to 98,500. So 98,500, and it's nearly. I mean, the chalukah, I wouldn't do it 8 and 1, but the chalukah he has the vast majority. Yehuda has from the two of them blended together. He has 80%. The other one is 20% approximately. The chalukah is 80-20, 78-22. That's the chalukah between the two of them. So he says, and Yehuda gave 8, and Shimon gave Yerachas. And, you know, it's all fine and dandy from the Netziv to offer such a shtickle Torah, but the truth of the matter is the Sugi in Sanhedrin doesn't have it nochamo. You know, not the shtickle Torah from the Malbim that Kolev gave his Egen Ishtot, and not the shtickle Torah from the Netziv that the Yehuda gave 8 and Shimon gave 1, because there's. So the truth of the matter is that if you look in Shita Mekubetzes in Baba Basra, in Daf Kuf Yud Zayin, it brings a Ravid. And the Ravid is Oymed on the Kasha. And the Ravid says, Chaluka shel oisa mem ches Arei HaLeviyim ben hashvotim lehoisa kefi goydel hanachlo shel kol shevet v'shevet, elo kefi misper ha'orim shenoflu bechelkom. Hoyu shvotim shenochalu har besodois ukromim u'mitboris u'misparei emut. ולאומה זו יהיו שבטים שמשפט הרי מרובה ולא יהיו בחלקם סודים וקרומוס ומדבורס. ולפיכך כשציווה תורה להפריש ללוויים איש כפי נחלוס אשר ינחולו ייתן מעורב ללוויים, הכוון היא לפי מספר האורים שנופלו בחלקם. ומשהיה מרובה באורים ניסן אורים לפי חלקו והמעט לפי מיעוטו. Says the Ravid, no, you're 100% right. You don't give it according to the, even if you go that is a Geidel of Nachlo. But not all the Nachlo show it. Some of them, people got a bunch of agricultural land and very little amount of major cities. And some of them got major cities and they got less Sodais and Kromim. Says the Ravid, Be'emes, it's possible that all other Shvotim were Shavim in the Mispar Orim. If you come take a look at most of the Shvotim that gave 4, they were Shavim. There are 3 Shvotim that had different numbers of Orim beyachas to the Geidel of the Nachla. Who are they? Yehuda and Shimon and Naphtali. And Naphtali had less Orim, and therefore he's giving 3, he's not giving 4. And Yehuda and Shimon together had more Orim, and therefore they gave 9 and they didn't give 8. As I state in the Ravid HaShtikol Torah, that since Yiten Me'orov, the parameter is not dictated by the amount of the fasha or by the Geidel of the Karka, but the amount of major cities or cities which had in every Shevet and Shevet. Most Shvatim got the same amount of this, other than 3 Shvatim, which is Yehuda, Shimon, and Naphtali. Naphtali got less, and Yehuda and Shimon got more, and therefore Naphtali gave 3, Yehuda and Shimon together giving 9. The Gemara in Sanhedrin state that Yehuda gave 4.5 and Shimon gave 4.5. Right? The Ravid himself brings the Gemara. The Ravid doesn't machois the Gemara. So Horav Michoel Sanhedrin, Abo Mechza. He says not the Pshad the Gemara means Yehuda Taka gave 4.5 and Shimon gave 4.5. It just means that both they gave it 9 Orim. It's possible Yehuda gave 5 Orim and Mechza, and Shimon gave 3 and Mechza. He says the Iker is in the Mechza. It could be that he gave Orim Umechza. The Ravid says that when the Gemara is Sakashe, Ya Avil Leforish Ferushe, the Gemara was clear that one city there was Mechza. Why? Because since it was blended Shimon and Yehuda together, there had to be that one shtot was split to half. If it's 7.5 and 1.5, if it's 6.5 and 2.5, if it's 5.5 and 3.5, doesn't make a difference. But since the Novi put them together, there must have been one city which was split to two. That more doesn't really mean 4.5 and 4.5, right? Thus, the Gemara said, you should have said which one, if he gave 4.5 each one, or 5.5 to Yehuda, and 3.5 to Shimon. That's the Gemara's kasha. Not the Gemara's kasha is each guy gave 5 and each got 4. Since they put them together, there must have been that there was a city which was He'ir, which was split to 2, and just we don't know if it's 4.5, if it's 5.5 and 3.5, and so on and so forth. But since it says Tisha Orim, they put it together, there must have been He'ir Achash is Mischal Keshnei Shvatim, and it's a raya to Rabbi Yochanan. Says the Ramban al Torah of the Pasuk Parshas Masim is Rav Tarbu Mis Hameatam Itu. Says the Ramban, and I quote, Al Das Rabbi Seinu Meis Bote Yehovit Shenochol Arbe Ikru Arbe Kemo Sheyisu Lemishpechosechem Aval Ashvotim Shovim Hoyu Benachalo Ve'af Al Pi Shetimtzo B'Sefer Yehoshua She'ein Misper Ha'orim Shenosnu L'Levim Shovel L'Shivteihem Mipnei Shoive Ha'orim Hoyo Shoyu Chashuv Ezu Ki B'Shumo Nischal Ko Ha'oretz Teida Sharei Nosnu Mi Yehudo V'Shimon V'Binyamin Orim Yud Gimel Umimate Isochor Asher V'Naftoli V'Chetzi Menashe Yud Gimel V'Eilam Ruben Al-Rishon B'Minyonom V'Nosnu Mimate Ephraim Arba Orim Umimate Dan Arim Arba V'Yubnei Dan Kiflaim Kibnei Ephraim. Ramban says, the beer of the Ramban says like this: if we could be mitzaref all the people from Shevet Yehuda, Shimon, and Binyamin, according to the minyan that they were named in Arbes Moav, will be together 144,300. And amongst the 3 of them, they gave 13 cities. And if I be mitzaref Yisachar, Osher, Naftali, and Chotzi Shevet Menashe, will be 192,400. They also gave 13 cities. So why is 13 cities taken from a total population of 144,300 just as much as the other Shvatim? There's 192,400. And Memate Ephraim, which had 32,500, you took 4 Orim, like Mate Don, which is 64,000, mamish double the population. B'diuk, double population. Behechrech, that zog the Ramban, that the Misper Orim is not totally in the minyan of the Uchlusim. Just to wrap it up, we have 4 shitas over here, Legabe the Orim, which were Mafresh, Yehuda, and Shimon. I just want to make a shtickle seder. Pashtus, the Suya Sagmore in Ira Nidachas in Sanhedrin, that they gave each 4.5. The Gemara says, if I read the Losh Lagmore to Pshutoi, Arba Umechzen, I Arba Umechzen, I Arba Umechzen. That's the Pashtus Hasuya in Sanhedrin. Das arrived in the Sugya Sagmor in Yeshnechlim Baba Basra, that they gave according the Hafrosha of Arei HaLeviyim was according to the Minyan Ha'orim, the towns, the cities that each one of the Shvotim got. And it's possible that Yehuda gave, the only reason why the Gemara was Neiches to Mechza, Chilkin, Yirash, Shvotim, because since they put it together, there must have been a reason to put them together, because there must have been one of the cities was split in half. But was it Yehuda giving 5.5 of Mechza and Shimon 3 of Mechza, or Yehuda gave 6 of Mechza and gave 2 of Mechza, and so on and so forth, is not. But according Shitas Harayved, is that the Hafroshas Arei HaLeviyim is pending the Misper Ha'orim of each one of the Shvatim received. Da Sayad Ramah and the Ramban, that the Misper Ha'orim is totally in the Chashivus of the cities, which is Nofal Bechelko Shel Echad Ve'echad. The Ramban says, the Gemara says, B'Shumon Ischal Ko Ha'oretz. There was a Shuma, there was some kind of appraisal as to the value of the land. Of course, we're not going to give agricultural land the same value as a fully developed land. So since B'Shumon Ischal Ko Ha'oretz, so Shitas HaRamban, the Misper Ha'orim is pending the Chashivus of the cities, which were Mufresh. And if somebody gave a Chashavus stot, it counts more than somebody gave a farmland, a Shvaches stot. And the Das Hamalbim is that Yehuda and Shimon together gave, Yehuda gave Shmoyna Orim, and Shimon, who was a smaller shevet, gave only a Yerachas. That's the basically to wrap up the contribution of all the Shvatim. The problem is that the whole sugya in Sanhedrin is very tamua. If I look at the nine shtet, the Navi doesn't say stam nine shtet, it says beferish, which is the nine shtet that gave Chevron and they gave Yehuda and Shimon. Chevron, Livna, Yossi, Reshtamoya, Chuloin, Dvir, Yoto, Beishemesh, Ayin. Chevron, if I look back in the Perek Tesvov, I see that Chevron was Yehuda, Livna was Yehuda, Yosir was Yehuda, Reshtamoya was Yehuda, Chuloin was Yehuda, Dvir is Yehuda, Yuto is Yehuda, Beishemesh, it says in Sefer Melachim, it says Beishemesh Asher Yehuda. Ayin, it says in Perek Tesvov is Yehuda. A different place it says it belongs to Shimon. Rashi asks, how could he say Ayin is Shevet Yehuda? And one place it says B'Shevet Shimon. It says Be'emes was B'Chelik Shimon. Since Shimon dwelled within Yehuda, he gives credit to Yehuda as well. Malkaponim, if you look at the Psukim, and this is the Makor of the Malbim, which was the Pashtan, if you look, Pshuta Shel Mikra, the names of the cities, each one of these cities is mentioned before in Perek Tesvov. If you look at all the Psukim, which Shevet was Neichel that city. So you can't change around and come and say 4.5 cities. It says Befeish, all these 8 cities was Bechelik be Yehuda, Psukim B'Furoshim, and Beishemesh also Pasuk B'Furish in Sefer Malachim. The only city that it says Ayin, which gives the credit to Yehuda and Shimon, is Ayin, and Rashi says Be'emes belonged to Shimon, and since he was within Yehuda, you give the credit to Yehuda as well. So Shteitoch Klor, as the Malbim. So Be'emes is, there's a Shailas V'Tshuvas from the Netziv called Meishiv Dover. The Netziv in the Sefer in Meishiv Dover is in Hilchos Bechor. If somebody wants to look inside in Chelek Beis and Siman Samach Dalet, so somebody came to ask him a kasha and asked him the kasha as a Choshev kasha. How can the Gemara say 4.5 and 4.5? You look at the Pesukim, it says the name of the Orim, and the name of the Orim. Shteitoch Klor, the 8 of them belong to Yehuda. So he says, B'Shem B'ni Harav HaGoyen. I mean, the odds are that Reb Chaim Berlin doesn't say the name, B'ni Harav HaGoyen. And I quote, and he says, Yesh Lema Al Pi Ma Shekosav HaRadak, brings down a Radak. The Radak is in Perek Yutes. שבשור שיפריש ישוע אורם ללווים עוד לא נכבשו ויפריש אחרים תחתיהם לפי שור. ובתוספתא מקס וירושלמי, אף על פי שהפרישו שכם בהר אפרים, לא הויסו קהילתס יפריש קרע אורם תחתיה עד שכיבשו את שכם, אף על פי שהפרישו קודש בגורל, לא הויסו קהילתס יפריש גם תחתיה עד שכובשו את קודש. In other words, as we said before, the Horav Michoel weren't ready because some of them עד כאן לשאלת הספתא, ומעתה אני אומר, this is the Lashon הנציב בשם יסון, דהש"ס דייק לישן יסר אורים 9 משני השבטים. דכל זה מיותר, דכסיב פרשון מתחילה שלא נאורים אל יהודה בשם ומפורשים בשמל, ממניון הלומלי, על כן, על פי הש"ס, כבון הסמיך לישוע, יפריש הסורים המפורשים בשמו יסיים. אך לאשר לא יוכל דובר להסכם, כי הכנייני אז באורץ, הויסף ישוע לאמר, דובר זה נמעקב לי הסורים אלה מפורשים דווקא הם ולא אחרים. ואם אין הלוויים יכולים לבוא באורים אלה פני הכניינים, יפרישו אחרים תחתיהם כאומו בתוספתא. אך דובר זה מעכב שיהיו אורים 9 משני השבטים האלה, וכן בכל הפסוקים האחרים אשר יוסף המיקרו למטה 4 אורים 2 אורים 3, כך הויס הכוונס ישוע שלכתחילו יפרישו אורים המפורשים, ואם לא יוכלו לו ועליהם יפרישו אחרים תחתיהם עד ומעטו יבואו דיבר כמקשי, כשאל פידרקו מאחר שלפירש רק אורים 9 משבטים, אך טוב, אז זה מעכב לפירש כמה משבט וכמה משבט זה, משמע, ובאיזה אופן שיהיה 9 אורים אפילו דל לפלגה, מהי, עד כאן תויב דיב בני שיחיה, which means to say that all the Torah was makpid, all the Novi was makpid, is the mi and the orim, but how to take dafka dishtet is not, so mimele, the Malbim could be right, that is 8 and 1, because that's the name of the original names of the Orim, which were to be mufresh, but being that at the time that Knainas Ba'oretz, and they weren't able to be mafresh exactly those cities, therefore, the way Orim Tachteim, and all the Gemara wants to have, that it's possible to have a Irachash, which is Nechlak L'Shnei Shvatim.